So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's Sutta class. We will start with the Namo Tassa. As usual, feel free to join if you like. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So, welcome to today's Sutta class. Today, we continue reading the Upakilesa Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 128, and we also continue studying Buddhist conflict resolution strategies. So over the course of the last few weeks, we have studied conflict resolution strategies with the example of the conflict in Kosambi, which is one of the two major conflicts from the Buddha's time, where a really teeny tiny incident, two monks quarreling about how to clean the bathroom, got completely out of hand, and it ended with the entire sangha at Kosambi quarreling and all the lay people getting involved and taking sides, and the whole thing just growing so big that eventually it developed into a schism, and the sangha was actually split into two parts. And over the course of the last few weeks, we have read different attempts by the Buddha to resolve the situation, different teachings that he gave. But eventually he just had to conclude that the monks were unwilling to listen to him, and there was nothing that he could do. And the monks just kept on quarreling, and they actually told the Buddha that they don't want to listen to him, that they want to keep on fighting, and they asked him to leave. So the Buddha actually did leave. He gave one last teaching where he said it was better to practice on one's own rather than practicing with such a community, because such a community is making so much bad karma that they cannot actually develop in the Dhamma. So if one continues to stay with such a community, you would actually obstruct your own progress in the Dhamma. And so he puts his own advice into practice and he leaves. And this is the beginning of the Upakilesa Sutta that we started reading last time, that we're going to keep on reading today. And when the Buddha has left Kosambi, the first thing that he does, which we also saw last time, is he visits a monk that is living alone. So a monk who is putting the Buddha's teaching into practice, who is not living with such an unwholesome community, who is just doing his own thing. And he checks on that monk, and then he hears that that monk is actually practicing properly, is actually making progress in the Dhamma. So that is one of the ways of living, or one of the ways of practicing Dhamma that the Buddha praises in the sutta, and that is one of the possibilities how we can make progress in the Dhamma. But then there's a more superior way, and this is the way we have seen then, which is practicing with a community of like-minded people, practicing with a community in harmony, where people can support each other in making progress on the Dhamma. And so the next group of people that the Buddha visits is the monk Anuruddha and his two friends, Nandiya and Kimbila. And they appear occasionally in the suttas, and they are always like the ideal, the epitome of a harmonious community, like the most perfect, most ideal way of living together as human beings. So whereas in the case of the group of the Kosambi monks, this is like the worst possible way of forming a monastic community, where even a tiny conflict, such as how to clean the bathroom, can get so much out of hand that it results in a schism in the sangha. So where everybody is just so much attached to their own views and so much caught up in their own delusions and defilements that nobody is actually able to take a step back and reflect on what they're doing and seeing that this matter is so tiny that it's not worth quarreling about. So this is the worst possible kind of monastic community or Dhamma practitioners that you could imagine. And this is contrasted in the sutta with the most perfect community, Anuruddha and his friends. So today we are going to see how Anuruddha and his friends are practicing and see how they are actually forming this really nice and supportive community for Dhamma practice. So as last time, I will continue reading from Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. I have put a link in the live chat, which is to Bhante Sujata's translation, because Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation is not on Sutta Central. If you click on the link, it should take you straight to Sutta Central paragraph 11, which is where we left off last time. If you're reading along in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, this is also paragraph 11 in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. So last time we stopped when the Buddha arrived with Anuruddha and his friends, and the first thing he asked them is whether they're living comfortably, whether they are having the 4 requisites, or whether their material needs are met. So that's obviously very important to make sure that people's material needs are met, because otherwise, if you're constantly in danger of, like, if you feel that your survival is threatened, if you feel that you can't actually survive there because like your most basic material needs such as food or shelter aren't met, then obviously you don't have the mental space to really focus on your Dhamma practice, and your mind will not quiet down. So this is the first thing that the Buddha checks, and the monks confirm that they are fine. And at this point is where we stopped last time, and where this time we continue, because this is the point where they start discussing how they live together as a community. So after checking that their material needs are met, the Buddha says to Anuruddha and his friends, "I hope, Anuruddha, that you're all living in concord, with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes." And Anuruddha says, "Surely, Venerable Sir, we are living in concord, with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes." And the Buddha says, "But Anuruddha, how do you live thus?" So now the Buddha wants to know some details. How exactly, what kind of practices do they do? Exactly how does it all work that they live together in such harmony? And Anuruddha starts to explain. And Anuruddha says, "Venerable Sir, as to that, I think thus. It is a gain for me, it is a great gain for me, that I am living with such companions in the holy life. I maintain bodily acts of loving kindness towards these venerable ones, both openly and privately. I maintain verbal acts of loving kindness towards them, both openly and privately. I maintain mental acts of loving kindness towards them, both openly and privately. I consider, why should I not set aside what I wish to do, and do what these venerable ones wish to do? Then I set aside what I wish to do, and do what these venerable ones wish to do. We are different in body, Venerable Sir, but one in mind." The Venerable Nandiya and the Venerable Kimbila, so his 2 companions, each spoke likewise, adding, "That is how, Venerable Sir, we are living in concord, with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes." So here, when the Buddha starts asking them, how is it that they can form this harmonious community, and how can they live together in such peace and have such a good way of forming cohesion in their group, Anuruddha doesn't start with describing any kind of specific practices that they do, like any kind of the way they organize the cleaning roster or the way that they organize their material living space, but he actually starts with the mindset, the approach that they have towards each other mentally. And the first thing that Anuruddha reflects on is that he really appreciates the companions that he lives with. He really appreciates that he is able to live with such good people. So this is the first thing, to recognize the people around us, how they are good people, and then not just taking that for granted, but really mentally noting how lucky we are and really appreciating the people that are there. So not taking the companions for granted. And I think this is very important. And also to appreciate and to understand that this is lucky if we have such people. This isn't normal. This isn't to be expected. It could be very different. It could be otherwise. People around us could be like unwholesome people. They could be quarreling. They could do all sorts of negative things. And if that isn't the case, if people around us are generally good people and generally trying their best, then this is something that we can appreciate and that we should really notice if that is the case. So he doesn't take his companions for granted. And of course, this is that is the reason why it's so important to choose the companions that we spend time with, our friends, our spiritual friends, our kalyana mittas, or in general, the people that are around in our lives, to choose them wisely. Because if there are good people around us, then we will generally be able to cultivate wholesome states. They will lead us to do wholesome things. The activities that we do together will be reasonably wholesome. So in our daily lives, while being with those people, we can actually cultivate good karma. We can actually cultivate wholesome states, and that will be very helpful for our Dhamma practice also. But if the people around us are kind of people that have a lot of very unwholesome habits, then that will actually drag us down, because the more time we spend with them, obviously, we will do activities together with them, and the activities that they would be interested in doing would be fairly negative activities that maybe lead us down the wrong path, make us cultivate unwholesome karma, maybe lead us to cultivate a way of speaking that is very unwholesome, or will lead us to whatever, drink alcohol or do unwholesome things. So for that reason, it's really, really important that we choose the companions wisely. And I think that is one of the major messages of this sutta, where also in the beginning, the Buddha also really exemplifies this, and he also chooses his companions wisely. And when he sees that he cannot help the people at Kosambi, then he decides to walk away and not keep the company with such unwholesome people. But here, Anuruddha, obviously, he has very good companions, and he really appreciates that. And then he talks about the practice of metta. And I think for those who have been following this series of talks on Buddhist conflict resolution strategies, this will sound quite familiar, because this ties in directly with a teaching that the Buddha gave earlier in a sutta called the Kusambia Sutra, Majjhima Nikaya number 48, that we read a few weeks ago. This was the first teaching that the Buddha gave to those monks, trying to help them, trying to get them to reconcile with each other. In that sutta, the Kusambia Sutra, the Buddha taught about 6 principles of cordiality that create love and respect and conduce to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. So the Buddha was trying to teach the monks at Kosambi how to form a harmonious community. Obviously, the Kosambi monks didn't put that into practice, but here in this perfect and harmonious community, it's quite natural that they would naturally have these 6 principles of cordiality that the Buddha taught back then. And the first 3 of these 6 principles were the practice of metta by body, speech, and mind. So exactly what Anuruddha is talking about here. So practicing loving kindness in the 3 ways of acting with the body, through the speech, and mentally. And of course, if we do that, that will create a very beneficial atmosphere with the others. And obviously, that will make people feel at ease around us if we have a personality that is full of metta, full of kindness towards others. And obviously, if we have that kind of atmosphere around us, then it would be very difficult for conflicts to develop, because we are not easily triggered, and we don't easily trigger other people's defilements. So practice of metta is very, very important. And here we see that they are also doing this, Anuruddha and his friends. And they're doing this both openly and privately. We've talked about this in quite a bit of detail in the Kusambia Sutta, but just to briefly recap, That means whether the others see it or whether they are not around and don't see it, so both openly and privately. We do acts with the body that are helpful for others, that are friendly towards others. So for example, if somebody's sick, we take care of them. If somebody needs something, then we can help them with that. If we see somebody has left something lying around, we put it away. We don't get angry because they're messy, but we just do what's necessary, just put it away. Or for example, somebody has left their laundry outside and they're not around, it starts to rain, then we put that away. Even if they don't watch us, even if they don't see what we are doing, even if they later don't even notice that we have done that, still these small acts of kindness towards each other lead to a very harmonious way of living together. And then also with the speech, the way we speak about others, or the way we speak with others, we choose friendly words. We choose a way of speaking that is pleasant. And also when we talk about others, when they're not around, then we talk about them in a way that is appreciative and that is friendly, and we don't gossip about them, or we don't put them down even when they don't hear what we are saying. And the same mentally, whether they're around or whether they are not around, the way we think about them is full of appreciation. We don't let our mind dwell on all the negative points and all the negative characteristics that they might have, but we focus mainly on all the positive points that they have, and we think about them in a friendly way. And even if they have negative points, then we practice forgiveness and we wish for them to improve, and we practice patience with them and so on. So these first three principles of cordiality are very important, just to set a general atmosphere that is pleasant and that is friendly, where people can feel at ease. And if people can feel at ease, obviously there's much less potential for conflict to develop. So this is the general attitude that those three monks have towards each other. And then Anuruddha also says, and the other two also say, that they reflect, why should I not set aside what I wish to do and do what these venerable ones wish to do? And then they do set aside what they wish to do and do what the others want to do. That means if there is a difference of opinion, if there is some kind of point that could potentially develop into a conflict, they don't tightly cling to their view. They don't think that they are always right, but they're actually very open to compromise. And they recognize that the other people are good people. So why shouldn't we go along with what they want to do? So if you practice in this way, obviously there is not much chance for conflict to develop. On the other hand, again, this shows us how important it is to choose our companions wisely, because obviously you can only go along with the opinion of other people if everybody is open-minded, and if people don't take advantage of you. Like if people know that you don't tightly cling to your view, but they want to kind of manipulate you, or they want to tightly cling to their own views, that means that you always give in, and the other people kind of, it's very easy for other people to take advantage of you if they have bad intentions. So again, this shows us how important it is to surround ourselves with spiritual friends, with kalyana mittas, or with generally good people, so that we can actually practice in this way without being taken advantage of. And again, this shows us the massive difference between the practice of Anuruddha and his group, where everybody is open to compromise, where everybody is flexible with their the way they want to do things, with their views. And the Kosambi monks, where people cling so tightly to their own ideas and their own notions that even the question how to clean a toilet becomes a massive point of conflict, and nobody's able to actually reflect, this is not really that important. Why shouldn't I let my opinion go and just go along with the way the other person wants to clean? But even with such a minor point, the Kosambi monks are not able to let their views and their own notions go. And this is exactly the opposite of what Anuruddha and his friends are practicing here. So by putting into practice these first three principles of cordiality, they are able to appreciate each other and to live in concord. and in harmony together, blending like milk and water and viewing each other with kindly eyes. And obviously the Buddha is quite happy about this because he's just coming from Kosambi, so he knows that he can't take this for granted. He's very happy that there are people who can actually put this into practice. And he says, good, Anuruddha, and I hope that you all abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. So this is the next question that the Buddha has. Are they actually practicing? Are they diligent in their practice? And of course, we all know that if things are too nice, if the people around us are too friendly and our situation is too perfect, it's very easy to get lazy. And if we don't have a certain amount of suffering, we don't actually feel like there is much urgency to practice. So the Buddha is a little bit worried that maybe things are too comfortable for them, and so they don't have the willingness to practice. So the next question he has is whether they are abiding diligent, ardent, and resolute. And Anuruddha confirms, surely, Venerable Sir, we abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. And the Buddha wants to hear a few more details, so he asks, but Anuruddha, how do you abide thus? And Anuruddha explains, Venerable Sir, as to that, whichever of us returns first from the village with alms food, prepares the seats, sets out the water for drinking and for washing, and puts the refuse bucket in its place. Whichever of us returns last, eats any food left over if he wishes. Otherwise, he throws it away where there is no greenery or drops it into water where there is no life. He puts away the seats and the water for drinking and for washing. He puts away the refuse bucket after washing it, and he sweeps out the refectory. Whoever notices that the pots of water for drinking, washing, or the latrine are low or empty takes care of them. If they are too heavy for him, he calls someone else by a signal of the hand, and they move it by joining hands. But because of this, we do not break out into speech. But every 5 days, we sit together all night, discussing the Dhamma. That is how we abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. So here, Anuruddha gives us some insights into how they have actually organized their daily life. So after sharing the general principles, the general attitudes that they have towards each other, now they're telling us the specifics of how exactly are they living together. And while we see that they don't try to manage potential points of conflict by really organizing everything in advance. So the way we sometimes do it in modern times, obviously, if we live together with other people, we'll try to draw up rosters and cleaning plans and various plans for various things and a long list of rules, the house rules or whatever that we have to abide by. And this is not the way they are doing it here. They have a much more kind of organic flow here. So whoever sees that something needs to be done, they just do it. So, for example, Anuruddha here says, whoever returns first from the village with alms food just sets out the seats and prepares the water for drinking and for washing and puts the trash can in its place. So, if you come back from alms round, you don't just prepare your own seat and the things that you need, but you just prepare things for everybody. You look out for your companions. If you're the first one, then it doesn't matter who the first one is, and there isn't a roster where this job is assigned to any specific person. Just the first one who's there will just look after everybody's needs and prepare everything that needs to be done. And we also see that apparently they did not go on alms round together. They went on alms round one by one, everybody for themselves, and this is generally the way we see things done in the early suttas. So in the early suttas, usually people go on alms round alone, or sometimes a teacher will go with their students, a small group of students that they are directly responsible for, but it's not that the whole sangha would go all together for alms round. So this is different from the way it's done in modern times, especially if you know how it is done in Thailand, for example. This is not the way it was done back then. And here, obviously, Anuruddha and his friends also go on alms round on their own. So it's not that just because they're harmonious, they have to do absolutely everything together. Still, they're individuals. There are many things in their daily life that they do on their own. So whoever just sees that they're the first one to come back, they will put they will prepare everything, and then whoever returns last will put everything away and clean everything. So as the text here says, they will just eat any food that is left over if they want to, and then the rest they will throw away. And it says here they throw away where there is no greenery, or they would drop it into water where there is no life. So this is an instruction that also comes from the Vinaya. So the reason for that is that when you throw away food, you should throw it away in a place where it doesn't cause problems, it doesn't disturb other people. So if you throw your food on crops that are growing or on vegetables that are growing, this can cause a lot of problems. It can spoil the crops. It can attract a lot of vermin. It can attract a lot of rodents. It can also start to rot. And then the vegetable or the crop underneath can also start to be damaged. And you also don't want to attract all these insects and all these rodents to the food that is growing there. For that reason, you shouldn't throw it in a place where there is greenery, and you also shouldn't drop it into water where there is some kind of life, because this can impact on the life there. If it starts to decompose or whatever, it can change the local ecosystem, and it could be negative for the animals and the water plants that are living there. So you should put it into you should dispose of your waste in such a way that it doesn't cause problem for the environment and for other beings. So already back then, safe disposal of waste was already a consideration that we find in the Vinaya. And then also that person, whoever is last, will also clean away everything that needs to be cleaned. So washing the trash can and sweeping the refectory. And when it says here refectory, we shouldn't imagine that this is some grand structure or some kind of massive building or palace or whatever. It's probably just some kind of covered area, maybe a small roof covered with like palm leaves or something. So it would have been very, very simple. And this is one of the keys why they can live together so harmoniously, and why they don't need to assign different tasks, and why they don't need to have rosters, because their daily life is really, really simple. So one key to creating community harmony is just to keep the tasks that need to be done to a minimum, so people don't start to quarrel because they feel overburdened. So here in this case, the amount of chores that they need to do is so minimal. Only takes a few minutes to do this. That means even if you're stuck with the same task every single day, you don't feel overburdened. It's very easy for every single person to do these kind of things. And so whoever turns out to be the first or the last can just do these kind of chores without feeling overburdened. So keeping things really minimal, really simple is really also one of the keys to creating community harmony. And the same with the water for drinking and for washing and for the latrine. Whoever sees that water is needed, they will fill the pots up. And if they need help, they just call someone else with a signal of the hand. So we see that they also limit the speech, the way of speaking, like the amount of talking that goes on in between them. So they're very careful not to start randomly chit-chatting, not to break the silence, because the more you chit-chat in your daily life, the more difficult it is to achieve mental calm and mental unification. So if you really want to practice deep states of samadhi, it is important that you don't create all these disturbances and distractions. And obviously, one single person can create distractions for the entire community. So it's important that the whole community makes an effort to maintain sort of this silence, so that everybody's samadhi is protected. And again, the chores that they have are so simple. You can just show it with the hand what needs to be done. You don't really have to discuss about all these things with words. So, and again, because for them it doesn't matter exactly how things are done, because they're very happy to go along with the way other people want things done. As it said before, They reflect, why should I not put aside what I wish to do and do what the other ones wish to do? So they don't need to discuss, like, should we fill the water pot up this way or that way, or should we turn it that way or this way, or like what method do we use for filling this up or whatever. You just show with the hand and you just go along with what the other person wants to do. So because they're so flexible, also there's no need for long discussions. And as they say, every 5 days, they sit together all night discussing the Dhamma. So it's not that they don't talk at all. It's not that they have taken a vow of silence and they think that speech is generally bad. It's just that they don't want to talk about random, like unimportant things. But they are very happy to spend an entire night every 5 days. So that is a huge commitment. Staying up every 5 days, an entire night. That's quite, that could be quite exhausting, or could seem like this is a bit much or something, but because they talk about Dhamma, they're really willing to do that. So when it comes to Dhamma, they're happy to talk, and they're happy to put in the effort of staying up all night. And I think this is also something that we have seen before in the Kusambia Sutra that I talked about before, where the Buddha taught about these 6 principles of cordiality. And he said, if a community puts those 6 principles of cordiality into practice, that will naturally lead to the development of 7 factors or 7 conditions for stream entry. And 2 of those 7 factors was being very eager to hear Dhamma, and also experiencing a lot of gladness, a lot of joy when you hear Dhamma. So here we can see that by putting these 6 principles of communal harmony into practice, they do experience those benefits. And it seems that they do experience that eagerness to hear the Dhamma and to experience that joy that is connected with the Dhamma, that enables them to actually stay up all night talking about Dhamma. And I think here in this paragraph that we just read, it becomes very clear that they also put the other 3 principles of cordiality into practice. So the first 3, the practice of metta by body, speech, and mind, is what we saw just now. This time now we see the next 3, the last 3, which was sharing everything with your companions, the people around you, and then keeping Sila together and practicing right view together. So yeah, I think we can see very obviously that they're sharing everything, all the equipment they have together, all the water pots and the brooms and the trash can and so on. Seems that they are sharing everything. And in the description of this principle, it is said they share everything, even down to the food that is in their alms bowl. So the smallest things, the smallest material possessions that they can possibly have, even that is what they share. And here we clearly see that they do even share alms food. So if one has too much food, they set it aside, and the last one can decide whether they want to eat this. Maybe if they didn't get enough food or something, they can eat any food that is left over, and if not, if they don't want to eat it, then they can throw it away. So here it's very clearly described that they really do share everything. So this principle they also put into practice. And then the next principle, keeping Sila together, I think is not directly mentioned here in the text, but obviously all 3 of them are monks. And for monks, obviously, Sila is not just the 5 precepts. For monks, the Sila is keeping the entire monastic code. So that means keeping hundreds and hundreds of precepts. And here in the descriptions that they have given us, it seems that they are very scrupulous, and that they're keeping even the most minor rules of Vinaya. So they're even keeping the rules that tell you how to dispose of your trash, not to throw it on greenery, or not to drop it into water where there are living creatures. So even those very minor rules is what they observe. So this even very minor Sila they observe, and also the way it is described how they clean the refectory and how they refill the water pots and so on. All these are very minor duties that are also mentioned in the Vinaya. So even they keep Vinaya even to this very even to this very high standard, so that they even keep the most minor rules, which clearly must mean that they're even more scrupulous about the big rules, the important rules. So it does seem that they have a very, very strong Sila, and that they're keeping all the rules together in common. So it seems that this principle is also fulfilled. And then obviously the last one, practicing the same view, and especially practicing right view, being like-minded, being surrounded with like-minded people. That also seems to be one that they are very strong on, a point that is very important for them. Because obviously if you have the same view in life, means that you have the same outlook, the same things are important to you, you have the same priorities in life. And here clearly we can see how they really have the same priorities. How, for example, they don't break out into speech for small things because everyone is very mindful of protecting each other's samadhi, each other's peace of mind, each other's stillness of mind. Or how everybody is willing every 5 days to sit together all night and talk on the Dhamma. So clearly they have a very strong right view, and they're all very like-minded. So this is also the last principle of cordiality that they have put into practice. So here we see that all of the 6 principles they have put into practice to a very, very high degree, which obviously clearly is why their community is so harmonious, and why they also now make progress in the Dhamma. So here the Buddha can see that these 6 principles that he taught to the Kosambi monks, which for the Kosambi monks didn't really work out because the Kosambi monks were not willing to listen to him. Here you can see that if a community actually puts them into practice, that does create a lot of community harmony, and that does create a very cohesive and strong group. And of course, this is very inspiring. This is just so beautiful, this whole passage, how it talks about people blending like milk and water, or viewing each other with kindly eyes. This is very inspiring. And I think there are many Buddhist communities out there who look to these 3 monks for inspiration. I personally have lived in a group where we tried to actually put this into practice. So we did live very simply. We didn't have a monastery back then. We were living in tents, and we just had one tent also like one tent as our Dhamma hall, where we would come together. And we did also every 5 days come together and at night and discuss Dhamma. And other than that, we tried to keep noble silence. So this is very inspirational. Many people try to put this into practice. And even nowadays, many monastic groups look up to these 3 monks and try to put this into practice, living very simply, maintaining those 6 principles, organizing the daily life in the way they are doing it, and having this idea of meeting every 5 days to talk about the Dhamma all night. I still think, when I think back at that time, I still think that was a very special time, and it was very inspirational to try and follow the example of the 3 monks. And obviously the Buddha is also inspired, because the Buddha also says, good, Anuruddha, but while you abide thus diligent, ardent, and resolute, have you attained any superhuman states, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones, a comfortable abiding? Venerable Sir, as we abide here diligent, ardent, and resolute, we perceive both light and the vision of forms. Soon afterwards, the light and the vision of forms disappear, but we have not discovered the cause for that. So now the Buddha asks, when you have established this really harmonious community, does that actually benefit your practice? So do you make progress on the path? Do you attain the superhuman states? That means, do you attain the jhanas? Do you attain the immaterial realms? Do you attain stream entry and the higher noble attainments on the path? So does your practice make progress if you have this harmonious community? And of course, Anuruddha confirms that their samadhi has made some kind of progress. At this point, Anuruddha, Nandya, and Kimbila are still in the very, very early stages of their monastic development. So they haven't actually attained jhana yet. So the way they describe it here, they have attained some level of concentration. They can see light and a vision of forms, but it's not really stable. It's there for a while, and then somehow the light and the vision of forms disappear. And they're not quite sure why that happens. They have not discovered the cause for that. So there is another sutta, which is called the Chula Gosinga Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number 31, where we have, again, those same three monks, Anuruddha, Nandiya, and Kimbila, still living together. And the description of how they live together is pretty much the same as what we read here. It's just they don't live in the Eastern Bamboo Park anymore. At that point, they live in the Gosinga forest. So that's another place. And they're still living together in the same way. And then again, they're visited by the Buddha, and the Buddha again asks the same questions. And at this point in the sutta, when the Buddha asks whether they have attained any superhuman states, then Anuruddha, Nandiya, and Kimbila, all three confirm that they have actually attained the jhanas, all the four jhanas, complete mastery over the four jhanas, complete mastery over the immaterial realms, and of course they have attained arahantship and are completely released from greed, hatred, and delusion. And at that point, in that other sutta, the Buddha greatly rejoices, and all the devas rejoice, and the Buddha praises them for the benefit that they bring to all beings. So that's that other sutta, but here they are still at like earlier level of development. At this point, they have some kind of samadhi, but it's not really that well developed yet. So they talk about perceiving light, and they talk about seeing forms. So light, obviously, this is a common occurrence when your mind starts to unify. When your mind starts to unify, it's not necessarily, but some people experience the mind getting very bright, getting very spacious, getting very light. And then also colors and lights can appear in the mind. So that is something that can regularly happen in when samadhi starts to develop. And also a vision of forms, that can mean seeing colors, seeing lights in specific shapes. It can also mean seeing other kinds of samadhi objects. So some people, for example, perceive a skeleton or other kinds of meditation, skillful meditation objects that can be used for some kinds of contemplations. So in modern times, you call these Samadhi Nimitas. And this is something that very often occurs in concentration. I think most people will know about this. And here Anuruddha says, it's not stable. It kind of comes and goes. So we perceive this, but soon afterwards, the light and the vision of forms again disappear. And then they don't quite know why. So they haven't really understood how their mind works. They don't really quite know what the reason is that their samadhi doesn't get deeper. And then the Buddha says, you should discover the cause for that, Anuruddha. And then he starts a long explanation about all the subtle defilements in the mind. So he talks about a dozen of these upakilesas, subtle defilements, that can interrupt samadhi when it has started to develop. When you have started to see light and forms, very subtle, fine defilements can arise in the mind, those upakilesas, and those can then destruct the mind again. So these subtle defilements are the cause why the samadhi is destroyed, why the light and the vision of forms disappear. So the Buddha says it's very important that when this happens, we investigate what is the cause. We try to understand how our mind works. We try to develop wisdom. We try to develop insight so that we understand which defilement is there, what has caused the interruption, so that we can work on letting that go and making sure that it doesn't disturb us again in the future. So this is how wisdom develops, how insight develops, how we understand how our mind works. And as I mentioned, there's a list now of about a dozen of these defilements. And I think, again, it seems that we don't have the time to go through them today. So I'm going to leave them for next time, because I've also seen that there are a few questions. So I think at this point, I'll probably end the sutta study for today. And we will finish up this sutta next time and talk about all these subtle defilements that can interrupt deep meditation practice. So now if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the live chat and I will see if I can answer them. So I see some people rejoicing in this sutta. I also love this sutta. It's again one of my favorite suttas. So beautiful and so inspiring. So Dan says, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. Yeah, that is so beautiful. And Venerable Jnana Ratana Bhikkhu rejoices. I'm so glad that you could join us, Venerable. So many people are happy with this sutta. I'm very glad. Maybe at some point in the future, we can also read the Chula Kusinga Sutta, where the 3 monks reappear and where they have attained arahantship. That is also a really beautiful sutta. And Dan says, Ayya, in lay life, there are so many characters that are difficult. It is so calming and happy to hear words from someone sincerely following the Dhamma after a whole week of difficulty. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. In lay life and in monastic life, there are characters that are difficult. So just because somebody takes robes doesn't mean that they immediately turn into an arahant, and it doesn't mean that they are immediately perfect. It just means that they make a commitment to practicing the Buddha's path, and that they say that their most important priority in life will from now on be the Dharma practice. So, but it doesn't mean that they immediately are people who are easy to get along with. So whether that's lay life or whether that's monastic life, we can encounter difficult characters in our daily lives. So if we have people around us that are really good people that are supporting our practice, then as we saw today, the first thing and the most important thing is to appreciate them and to not take them for granted, because those people are hard to find. So Anuruddha, Nandya, and Kimbala, they were really, really lucky that they found each other. Otherwise, like in our daily lives, probably most people that we come in contact with, whether that's monastics or lay people, won't be as perfect as Anuruddha, Nandya, and Kimbala. So we won't mesh with them as well as the ideal people. And of course, the ideal people would probably be different for everybody, because we also all have different characters, and we also get along with different people like differently. So if there are people around us that are not the perfect people, then it is good to practice in such a way that we notice their strong points, so that we notice maybe areas where they are actually really skillful. So maybe they have a good quality in some way. Maybe they have also difficult points, and our mind usually always focuses on all the negative things, and we start, to really keep on focusing on that and criticizing that and complaining about them. And this is exactly what we should not do. So the thing that we should do is really focus on their strong points, thinking thoughts of metta, thinking thoughts of friendliness about them, talking about them in friendly ways, focusing on the things that they do well, things that we can appreciate. And maybe even a difficult person maybe has a few habits or a few tendencies that are very skillful, where they are better than we in some aspect of Dharma practice. Maybe they're very generous, or maybe they're very kind, or maybe they're very good at right speech, or maybe they are always helping others, or maybe they like to read suttas, or maybe they like to meditate, or maybe they like to practice solitude, or whatever. Maybe they have some kind of strong point where they're actually more advanced on the path than we are. So we can just focus on those particular points and appreciate them for that, and take them as role models for that specific thing. So they don't have to be role models for our entire life if they are difficult, but maybe there's one or two characteristics where they are actually people that we can aspire to, and we can appreciate them for that particular quality and for showing us what is possible in that particular respect and how we could develop further on the path in that particular aspect of the path. So focusing on the good sides of them rather than constantly focusing on the negative sides, and practicing metta and friendliness, thinking in friendly ways, talking in friendly ways, will be very helpful also to establish a much better atmosphere and much easier relationship with them. Usually that can help. And even if the other person doesn't react to your metta, even the other person doesn't change their ways, at least your own mind is protected. And at least if your mind is full of metta instead of being full of anger and tension, then because your mind is not tense and is not angry, a conflict will not develop. So if your own mind is full of metta, full of friendliness, very spacious, very relaxed, no matter what the other person will do, a conflict will not develop. So you're protecting yourself by practicing metta towards that other person at the very least. And Dan says, it's so true, that statement, the Sangha give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world. Yeah, so I think it's inspiring to know that at least there are a few people out there who could actually put these teachings into practice. So just so that we have role models that we can aspire to. And I think Anuruddha, Nandia, and Kimbila are definitely pretty cool. I think I have to go a little bit faster. And Dan says, Ayya, do you think what is so interesting about this sutta is the relation between cordiality in community and deep meditation? Yeah, I think what is really important and interesting in this sutta is that it is deliberately set up to show the contrast between the really unwholesome community in Kosambi and then various ways of wholesome practice. So one choice that people can make is to do things alone, such as the monk Bagu did, where he doesn't live with a community, he just lives by himself. And that seems to work out for him quite well, and he can develop on the path. So that is what we studied last time, the monk Bagu and the way he's doing things. And then obviously, if you have a community, then that's better and that's actually easier, because then you can support each other. If you have to do everything alone, it's a little bit harder. That is one possible way, but it's a little bit harder. If you have a community that can support each other, the path gets a little bit easier. And so the important, but if you have a community, and it's important that the community is in harmony. So this is exactly what you say, the relationship between cordiality in community and deep meditation. If there is a lot of conflict and strife and quarrels in your community, then you, even if you don't participate, your mind is constantly occupied, and you have to be very careful, because you don't want to get too much involved in all these issues. So you can't really mix with the other people in a very easy way. You always have to be extremely on edge. You have to be extremely mindful, extremely careful how you interact with the others, so as not to get drawn into their conflicts. And obviously, if you do get drawn in, then like your progress on the path is completely obstructed, because you just cultivate all these unwholesome mind states and cultivate so much bad karma that you can't really develop higher stages on the path. But if your community is harmonious and everybody practices metta towards each other, and people are not too much don't cling too much to their own views, and are compromising and sharing and keeping Sila and having the same view, the same priorities, and so on in life, then obviously it's much easier. You can be much more relaxed. You don't have to be so much tense and on edge the whole time. And obviously that will help with also the mental relaxation, and that will help developing deep samadhi. So even in your daily life, you'll constantly be cultivating wholesome qualities while you're with your community. You can constantly cultivate metta. You can constantly cultivate giving and sharing and letting go, and talking in wholesome ways about the Dharma and so on. So this kind of really calm and tranquil and wholesome way of life is obviously a much stronger foundation for deeper stages of meditation than if you have to be constantly tense and on edge and really super careful around the people that you're living with. So there is a very clear and very strong relationship between communal harmony and deep meditation. And Anagalika Sunya has a question. Hello, Anagalika Sunya. Nice to see you. I hope you're doing well. And she says, something has always puzzled me about this sutta. If everyone does what the other wishes, how do any decisions get made? What is your experience? Yeah, I think obviously at some point you have to make a decision, because if everybody says we do what you want, then obviously nothing ever gets done. So I think it's just to show the contrast again with the way they're doing it in Kosambi. In Kosambi, everybody is so tightly clinging to their own views that they can't even stop fighting about how to clean a bathroom. So everybody has their opinions, even about small matters like how to do cleaning or how to arrange various things in a community, where to store the trash can, or like where to keep the broom or whatever, how to fill up the water bottles and things. Like, even if your way of life is really, really simple, still you could be very attached to the most minor thing. So I think what the sutta is trying to tell us is just like, if it's not that important, just go along with what the majority wants, or just be open to other people's feedback. And if they have a better idea, don't tightly cling to your own idea. And in the end, really, it doesn't matter. Like, their life is so simple. It doesn't matter where they keep the trash can. It doesn't matter how you clean a bathroom. It doesn't matter how you fill up a water bottle. There are various ways of doing this, and just be flexible and be open-minded, and don't tightly cling to all these ideas and notions of how to organize stuff. Obviously, if somebody came along and were teaching distorted dhamma, or were like teaching wrong things, or were like trying to lead them to do unwholesome actions, clearly they wouldn't just go along with it because like they would say, well, nothing matters, and I will just practice metta and do what the other person wants to do. So clearly you have to have some wisdom, and clearly your companions need to be good companions. Like, you need a lot of wisdom when you practice in this way. You can't just say nothing matters and no view is worth preserving. Like, you have to have some basic understanding of right view, and some basic appreciation for each other. Otherwise, like, one person can very easily abuse all the others and take advantage of all the others. So I think this passage just tells us that we shouldn't tightly cling to our views and be open to compromise. And how do decisions get made? I think by just listening to each other, and then the best way of doing things will naturally emerge. And if there is no best way, if all ways are roughly equal, then it really doesn't matter which way to do. So there's no need to spend a lot of time talking about it. Yeah. So Joskar says, I always feel peace when hearing you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoy. And I think this is a very beautiful sutta. And actually, we're all just hearing the Buddha teaching. So I think we should all be very grateful to the Buddha for sharing the teaching, and for the 3 monks for practicing so beautifully, so we can aspire to do the same. So I think questions have run out for today, and time has also come to an end. Before we finish, I just wanted to say, some people have requested in the past whether or not we can also do sutta teachings in German. And I will be, in the next few weeks, I will be giving sutta teachings in German on Thursdays at 8 p.m. at the place where I'm staying at the moment, which is Miaofa Center in Berlin. And that will be live streamed on Zoom. So if anybody is interested to have sutta teachings in German, Thursdays, 8 p.m. German time, which is 2 p.m. New York time, you can send an email to our center. I will put that in the live chat. Send an email and request the Zoom login, and then you can join. And of course, if you're in Berlin, you can also join in person. So this is the email address. info@miao-fa.de. So if anybody's interested, just send us an email and we'll give you the Zoom login. Otherwise, I will see you all next week. We will end as usual with 3 sadhus. Feel free to join in. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a good week, and we will continue this sutta next Tuesday.